Relationships take work, and even under the best of circumstances, people can falter in those relationships for one reason or another. This is fairly commonplace in our youth, but even when married, issues can arise. One of the worst things you could do is marry the love of your life, only to find yourself cheating on them by having an affair with another man or woman. For Dr. Kenneth Stahl, his dalliance with a medical receptionist would have been a marriage ender, and while Stahl had a history of affairs, he never could have imagined that this time it would cost him his life thanks to a former mistress and a murder plot gone wrong. This is the story of Adriana Vasco in the case of the Murderous affair. On November 20th of 1999, Dr. Kenneth Stahl, age 57, an anesthesiologist, took his wife to celebrate her 44th birthday, but the couple would never return home. Later found shot dead in their car on the side of the highway. Police were initially baffled by the murders, but a little digging by investigators quickly brought up a long list of affairs and issues between the husband and wife, and further digging found something strange. A number of calls to a woman from the doctor's cell phone leading up to the murders. Detectives would track down that woman, Adriana Vasco, and inquire about those calls between her and the doctor. And surprisingly enough, Vasco would reveal the details of a murder-for-hire plot to the detectives. She would lay out how she tasked her boyfriend, Dennis Godley, to kill the doctor's wife, the doctor himself offering Godley $30,000 because he wanted out of his marriage. Vasco even going so far as to drive the killer to the location to commit the murder. But while carrying out the murder, Godley decided to also murder Stahl, the man who was supposed to pay him for the murder, in an attempt to silence any witnesses to the initial murder of the doctor's wife. If the story ended here, it would be yet another tragic murder, but Vasco's story would continue, as after her arrest for masterminding the murder, a judge would rule that all of the statements she had made to investigators regarding the plot were inadmissible. You see, the judge found that the statements and the confession that she had given to the authorities had been illegally obtained, and that she had been coerced to provide them. The judge noted that detectives, speaking with Vasco, had manipulated a vulnerable woman. He pointed to the fact that detectives played on her fears regarding the safety of her children. This means that at the eventual trial, the jury was able to see two sides of Vasco and never informed of the woman's confession to being part of the murder, complicating what otherwise would have been a fairly straightforward case. During the trial, Vasco would often burst into tears when discussing what befell the doctor and especially his wife, telling her lawyer on the stand that it's hard to talk about her. I don't like to think about her because I hurt her, referring to cheating with her husband. Vasco's defense team would argue that she suffered from PTSD, from past abusive relationships, and a serious sexual assault while living in her native Mexico. All of these things would lead her to abuse both drugs and alcohol for relief. They even pressed that Vasco and Dr. Stahl carried on an affair for several years, and that the pair both shared a hatred for Mrs. Stahl. They claimed that because of this, the doctor asked Vasco to find someone to help murder his wife for $30,000, as well as to find a location where it would all take place. During this exchange, Vasco suggested that she knew a person who would agree to the plot, noting to the doctor that it was another boyfriend of hers, Dennis Godley, and that he would agree to the price the doctor had pitched to her. Without the confession in play, the prosecution had a much more difficult time, especially after the defense claimed that Vasco was involved in some fashion, but that she was manipulated by Dr. Stahl into joining the plot to kill his wife. On the stand, Vasco noted that while she did overhear her boyfriend and the doctor discussing the details of the murder, she never thought that they would move forward with it. She told the jury that, "I didn't believe any of this was going to happen." But while the prosecution's case was made more difficult thanks to the work of detectives, they did enough to convince the jury that Vasco was directly involved in the plot and acted willingly with her boyfriend. They claimed that Dr. Stahl may have wanted his wife out of the way, and even helped plan the murder in order to avoid a lengthy and costly divorce, but that Vasco was not pressured and that she sought out the killer. The jury did not buy her story of being manipulated or forced into the murder. They also found 2 special circumstances of lying in wait to commit murder and multiple murders, but rejected a 3rd special circumstance of murder for financial gain. "She's a tough, street-smart person," said one juror. The jury felt that as long as she wasn't intoxicated or high, she had a pretty good idea this would happen. For her part in the murder, Vasco would be sentenced to life in prison, and because of the special circumstances that the jury found, and because the judge's refusal to reduce the first-degree murder charge, she will not be eligible for parole.